What is, I got two questions. I want to ask you this first. I'm not asking for dollar signs, but out there on the indie circuit, when you're working 3 or 4 times a week and then you're going home and you repeat the process, did that for many years. You're finally here. Things are more steady here. You got a pretty good sense of what you're going to make, depending on the houses, but the money's better.
Yeah.
Put it that way. How hard was it to survive on the indie scene with a wife and now 2 kids?
Yeah, well, I was on the indies. I only had one. I had my son. And then right when I signed, like a couple months before, my daughter was born in April of 2014, and I started with WWE in August of 2014. So she came along right at the end of my indie days, but I already knew I was coming to WWE when she was born. So I was supporting my wife and our son. It wasn't easy. Like for the first 10 years, I worked another job Monday to Thursday. Whether it was I worked at a gas station for a long time, for 7 years, and then my wife got pregnant, so I felt like I needed a better job. I moved to a warehouse. I was working we're in the Staples Center. I was working in a Staples warehouse for about 4 years, and then they were very accommodating of my schedule. They knew I wanted to be a wrestler, this and that. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'd have off. I'd come back Monday. But we definitely weren't rich. Like at one time, I got my heating cut off because I couldn't pay it.
Yeah.
Just my wife called me. I remember I was at my parents' doing something. My wife called me. She's like, they just came to shut the heating off. I'm like, well, it's April. We owe this much. There's no way I'll be paying that anytime soon. Thankfully, we live right next to her mom's, so there was no running hot water for months. So we'd have to go take showers at her house. And then, the summer months came, so we didn't need heating. But then by the winter, I had to scrunch up all the money I could to pay that bill and get it started back up again. So it wasn't easy. But then by 2012 or maybe even 2011, I really started doing better. Like that's when I decided to just completely focus on wrestling. So I dropped the other job. And I just went in 3-4 times. Every booking I could, I would take. I started going back to Europe because when my son was born, I stopped doing overseas altogether because I didn't want to be away from them for that long. But then I figured out, I could probably go Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Europe and still come back Monday. I'm only gone for a couple of days. And Europe was always very, England especially was always very hot for the indies. So it was a great place to make money. So by the time I was in 2011, 2012, I was doing I was making a pretty good living, and we weren't rich by any means, but we weren't stressed about money for the first time.
On the indie scene, how is the negotiation process to up the ante and get paid more? I understand the structure. I've always been in a territory system or a big company. Going from USWA to WCW, ECW, WWF, so on the indie scene, I'm never asking for numbers, but what is the process? Once you've been around, all of a sudden you're becoming, and you are an established draw on the indie scene. So is it strictly on the house? I mean, it's going to be on the house, but what's the process?
So, it's funny because at first when you're trying to get, I'll say 2007, 2008, I'm still trying to make my name on the indies. So I'll be working places for a lot cheaper because I'm hoping to get in with them.
Right.
But then by 2012, when I already have the name on the indies and there's a new place I want, now they're coming to me, first of all, I'm not really asking them. Now I'm charging more than I would if I worked for them regularly. So it's like a switch, you completely flip it upside down. But then, I'll give an example. So PWG, I wrestled for in California from 2004 all the way to the end of my indie career. And that place, the promoter was like my brother, first of all, and he was really the one who took the first shot on me and Sammy. So we never asked him for a raise. We started at $100, and then he would just give us a raise when he felt it was right, and we never asked for more because we were so grateful, and we loved going to PWG. Ring of Honor was kind of the same thing. We started with what they gave us, but then for them, we actually had to ask for a raise once it was time, because we would also have contracts with them. So whenever it was time to renegotiate the contract, we'd ask for a little bit more money, every couple of years, I guess. But then all the other places, by 2012, I started wrestling in AIW in Cleveland. And the first time I went there, I didn't know whether I'd ever be back. So to me, it was it's the first time I wrestled for them. I don't know if I will go back there, so this is how much I'm charging. And it was a high price. And they paid it. I went, I enjoyed myself. And they said, well, maybe we could come back. You could come back next month. I'm like, well, if you bring me back more often than that, here's my price. And they're like, oh. And I dropped it significantly because I knew I enjoyed that place, and now I want to go every month. That's kind of how it works. There are some places where I wrestled for the first time for that, and then I'd be like, well, if they want to bring me back, it's still the same price because this isn't really for me, but I'll come back if there's money to be made.
But you were very proactive in the process, because there's a lot of guys. I was just talking to a guy who will remain nameless. This is the Unnameless podcast.
Yes.
And he never really picked up the money aspect of it, and just, got paid what promoters would pay him. And so I think it's not specific to pro wrestling, but almost in any endeavor. I mean, I think you got minimum wage these days, but, people want to pay anybody to do, as little as possible to do whatever the required task at hand is.
Yeah.
If you don't learn the money in on anything, you're always going to make the same.
Yeah.
But I always try to tell the boys, or the people who listen to podcasts coming up in the business, that it's incumbent upon themselves upon them to learn the business from all facets. When you first get in, you're trying to be a mechanic. You just learn how to do the work in the ring.
Yeah.
Tell a little story, put some psychology in there. But along with that comes the money and everything that goes with it. And that's what being a pro is all about.
You have to know what your worth is.
Exactly.
But with that comes along some delusion for a lot of people.
You are correct, sir.
That is a very it's a very touchy topic for a lot of people.
It's very subjective.
It's very subjective. You have to be realistic. I think a lot of people, even now, I still keep my finger on the pulse of the indies. And, sometimes I'll find stuff out that blows my mind, like, oh, this guy wants this much. Get out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then I'll also hear about guys who work for way too little, in my opinion. Yeah. Because, you know what I mean? You got to know what you're worth, and you got to have, you got to have a head on your shoulders, and you have to have common sense, but you have to protect yourself for sure, because there are those people who are going to try to pay you as little as possible to get as much out of you as possible. And, that's good when you're trying to make a name for yourself, but you can't let people take advantage of you either.